Okay, so today's little chat's about an internet troll by the name of Fatty Chazwold and why he's wrong. Yeah, so what you got is you got this guy, right, that um, I don't know, I think he'd be socially isolated in some way, perhaps, um, and he gets his kicks and a sense of personal worth from trolling other people. You know, schoolyard bully type personality, whatever. And he just feeds off. He's got to run other people down because that makes him feel good and makes him feel superior intellectually. But the truth of his intellectual capacities is that he's below the norm. He's below the norm. And how do we know that? Well, when you actually drill down on his capabilities, you find that the information is not there. Now, Dan, you know full well that research requires quite a lot of effort and work, right?
Yeah, he seems to try to present his personal conjecture as evidence for his claims.
Yeah, well, he generalises, right? He'll make a
Yeah,
generalised position.
much better.
He might say something like, like the logical arguments. He'll criticise the person that he's attacking. You say, well, you don't know logic, so how can you have done any research? Well, that's bullshit. You do your research by reading the freaking books and all the information, and you don't need. It's not an essential toolkit item to have an understanding of logic, to understand the works of others. It just simply isn't. You
Well,
don't
it's
need
like,
logic to ride a bloody bike, you know?
yeah, exactly. Well, it's like saying, well, you don't have a proper epistemology. You don't understand my epistemology, or these other. Rob, here's what's in vogue right now. This is a fad that people are doing. They're taking terms from philosophy that they don't understand, and they're trying to use them to make themselves sound smart and trying to obscure what the real topic is. And they use this as a defense mechanism. Is my little hypothesis on this, Rob. It's their defense mechanism because
Well,
Rob, when they feel inadequate because you presented more information than they understand, that's when he throws out that logic thing. Does that make sense?
oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I mean, if you try and pin him down in his attack on your position, he won't play that game. He'll just keep the conversation in a general context, whereas a proper debate focuses on the specifics. So if you can destroy, now sometimes you have to destroy several specifics. It's not enough to do one, particularly when you've got a long-running theory like mine. It covers a lot of territory. So you've got to destroy it in multiple places. But you do that by actually examining the proposition or several of them. And he, if, because see, he makes the grandiose statement that I'm wrong at the outset. That's another technique, right? They just say you're wrong. It's all bullshit. That sort of line of thinking. They don't actually get into the detail and say, well, look, this is why you're wrong. They won't go there, and that's because they're lazy buggers and they don't do the work themselves.
It's beyond being lazy though. It's somewhat deflection and somewhat malicious though, in the sense that they want to impede the he wants to impede the valuable information that you have available because you've done the research. He has not. And he doesn't want to contribute to that. He wants to just dismantle it as much as possible.
Yeah, but it's not about me. I'm just one of his many, targets or victims. He will have done this to many other people.
You know what, Rob? Sorry to interrupt you, but that's a good point, though. Last night we were in that hangout with St. Tommy, and how many people spoke up about it? Like four or five?
I'm sorry I didn't get that.
In the hangout with St. Tommy last night, about 4 or 5 people, Christians and non-Christians, spoke up about him, saying what you're saying right now, that he's very destructive.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's obvious. But you see, here's the problem, right? It's um, the the attack on a person in a main street scenario where the community or the group of people that are walking down the street whilst this attack is going on keep walking, right? That's exactly what happens. The group on the internet sit around the table, they see the bad behaviour, they recognise the bad behaviour, but they allow the bad behaviour for entertainment. Schoolyard bully stuff, right? The group of kids all circle around, the bully beating up the innocent young child that's not able to stand up for themselves, and they sit and watch the fight. It's that phenomena. So it's not only Chazwold that's a problem, it's also other people not doing anything about it. And that's an interesting thing, Dan. I wonder what sort of a place the internet would be if you stopped trolling.
Yeah, I wonder too. The thing about the internet though that has promoted trolling, Rob, is the degree of anonymity that these people think they have. So that's what's doing it right there, because they can hide behind their computers. Because in person, it does and can happen, like you said, on the playground or what have you. But it's not happening to the same extent that I would say that it's online. I mean, do you agree with that?
Hang on, mate. Hang on. You're breaking up there. Your audio is going in and out.
Okay, let me reload because I'm going to reset my modem because I think my signal is bad. So give me 1 minute here. I'm just going to unplug my modem and plug it back in.
Mm-hmm.
1 sec here. I'm going to rejoin.
Hello, viewer. Are you Chazwold, the unworthy? I was just gonna Scaffold, just wait till Dan gets back. I was just gonna share with him a little victory I had of significant proportions. So I'm really interested to see how that group that I debated with react today. It was a debate about whether senses are the true and unbiased determinants of reality versus the brain. Their position was the brain was, which is wrong. And we proved it. Bella? No, what? Hang on, Dan, I'll be back in a sec.
Okay. Yo, Scaff, is my mic better? Did that fix my my connection problem?
Yeah, it's good. Hey, I had a big victory yesterday, and it'll be interesting to see how the guys react today. So I was in with Cerebus, who was parading around as Lucifer. He's got this second account, and you know he he does it extremely well. But anyway, I was in the room with them, Lulu and John and Jello and brother John, and what I was arguing was this, and it's a really important argument. It's a very, very, very important argument, I think. It was an argument about the senses being the ultimate arbiters of truth. And so I hold that our senses don't have any bias, and so we can rely on them if we want to know truth about something. Use our senses. We can't rely on our brain. We simply can't. It's the place of hallucinations and all the rest of it. Now, the argument came down to this very interesting example, because I said to them, prove me wrong, prove my position wrong. And it came down to an example where an amputee, loses a limb, but still has a sensory, they termed it a sensory appreciation of the limb still existing, right? But there were no sensory organs because they're gone, the limb's gone. And I said, so they gave that as an example, and I didn't know much about that particular phenomena, so I had to go and look it up online, and lo and behold, when I got online, scientists have determined that the actual event that causes these false sensations in the phantom limb occurs in the brain. So that was a definitive win on my part, but there was little reaction from the group when that point was made. So I'm not going to let them forget. But here's my theory. My theory is that what they'll do is that they'll play it down. Now, why is it significant? Well, here's why. If it's true that the senses are the only real determinant of reality, and I hold that that is an absolute true statement, and that's why we have concepts like nowism, being in the moment. If the senses are the absolute arbiter of truth and reality, and the only measures that we have of reality, therefore we no longer rely on the brain's interpretation of reality at all. If there's doubt, we use the senses. So that then means that if someone says to you, there's a guy that sits at the top of the world and he runs the show, he creates the whole universe, then you simply need to say, well, let's test it against sensorial validation. It can't happen. Why? Because the bloody thing doesn't exist. Yeah, so very interesting little discussion that one was.
Well, as you were stating that, here's what I thought of. Your sensory thing can be analogous to the old adage, cameras don't lie.
Yeah, well, it's exactly right, because the thing is about the senses, right? The organ itself, right, has no aspect for variation. So there's no little mini mind in the senses. The senses just sense reality, and they only work in the now, so the current time slice. You can't use your senses to go back in time, nor can you project forward and use your senses. You can only use your senses in the current moment of reality. And they, as you quite rightly said, they do not tell lies. However, the mind's a different kettle of fish. The mind's capable of hallucinations. The mind is also capable of dreams. The mind is also capable of interpretation, filling in the gaps. And when it's filling in the gaps, it can make errors. So there's errors at the mind, but there are no, zero, zip, nada errors at the sense. And that's when people say, well, hang on a minute, what about colour blindness? Well, that's okay. There's still no error for the colourblind person, but it's an explainable variation, still in the realm of reality, right? So, and then they throw up an idea of, well, what about the spectrum? We can't see the full spectrum. Well, hang on a minute. The reality of humans is that we see a limited spectrum. That's the way God made us. Whoops, did I make a mistake? So, no, that's our nature.
Rob, you're starting to worry me when you say stuff like that.
I'm only joking. But that's the nature of the human reality, is that we have a limited range. But within that range, there still is no error.
Yeah, but hey, I want to add this as well. So even though we can't see all those colors, it's the same rationale of, well, I can't see the germs in my hands right now, but under a microscope I can. I mean, we have tools to see those colors with. So that's, his argument is null and void, because those scientific tools allow our senses to see those things.
Exactly. But again, you're still using that sense organ. It's just been enhanced by technology, but it still does come back to that sense organ being the witness, and that sense organ will not lie. And what that means is that you can go to another person, right? And as long as you're not relying on their interpretation of things, right, or their bias, their intellectual bias, or their mind biases, you will get a 100% agreement or validation at the sense level. If there's a variation, it'll be known scientifically why that variation occurred, or it's knowable. We at no time enter the phase of belief, not once. It's knowledge, science, reality, real, knowing, gnosis. That's what it is. And belief is the enemy. Belief is a problem in the human mind, because it's the abstraction of reality. And then when you start to live your life with this abstraction, you can only ever end up with a drama or a problem. That's the hello, Ludic. Yeah, so that's the reality, right? And it'll never, ever, ever be any more complicated than that. That's just how things work. But what it does is it cancels out the argument for belief as an arbiter of reality, or an indicator of reality. Just get rid of that idea completely. And if you want to know if something's real, if it doesn't pass the sense test, it doesn't exist. It's not true. It just isn't. Angels ain't real. Devils ain't real. But egos are real. Well, they manifest as a real thing based on behaviours. But if you examine the cause of the behaviour, it's a false thought. Right? Like Fatty Chazwold, he thinks in his own mind that he's intellectually superior to most people. However, if we sat him down and did a test on that theory, right, that we could validate using our senses. Now, how do you do that? Well, you observe, you test, you ask questions about his knowledge, you inquire down to the the detail, and you'll find that it's not true. What his belief that he holds in his mind will not match reality. It won't. I guarantee it, 110%. Because if it did match reality, we wouldn't see the behaviours that we get from him. The trolling, the ego mind, just wouldn't exist. Sty said it perfectly one night. He said, oh, you know, we're a special type of person and, you know, we get bored. So that's why we troll. Well, no, you've got a big ego, you're not a special person, and you troll because you've got an inferiority complex probably. And that's why you do it. That's the truer story. And you've got a freaking big ego. Anyway. And this all ties in down to cognitive dissonance, right? Because when you get a guy like Chazwold, so I guarantee you, if Chazwold was to come into this room, I could get him into an upset pattern, ultimately. Because, you know, he has a notional idea about himself that's not matched by reality. As soon as we do an inquiry with him and probe on his knowledge, and as soon as he starts to feel exposed, cognitive dissonance kicks in, the behaviours change, a little bit of anxiety kicks in, he either tries a fight, if he's unsuccessful, he leaves the room. That's it. No more complicated than that. Yeah. That's actually a pretty good summary of the whole study, really.
You know, what he's doing though is not an isolated phenomenon, like you were saying though. This is something that they have a commonality in doing. You know, the tactics that he employs.
No, it's the same phenomena. They're no different. It's in all humans, right? It's why you get the pack mentality, right? Now, you regard Chazwold, Cerebus as a good person, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Well, see, he'll play the game as well. I've seen him. They get engaged as a pack, you know, and they all have a bit of a niggle. And they class it as light entertainment. But the difference between Cerebus and Fatty Chazwold is the error, the fault, the faulty thinking about his superiority. That's the thing that leads him to do more damage. He tries really hard to destroy the other person if he can, to break him down, and that's his victory. You know, that's what he's after. John May's the same. Well, sorry, to be correct, it's every person's capable of it. It's whether you choose to follow that path or not. John May has, you know, got himself deeply entangled in it. Vladimir has. I mean, they're really at the sicko end. I said that deliberately. They're still ordinary human beings, but down, as long as your ass points to the ground, mate, I tell you, I'm right. But you're welcome to try and prove me wrong. All you'll do is make me stronger.
Well, I think on this.
Sorry, I didn't hear that.
I think on the senses, we're mostly on the same page.
Yeah, yeah, but Dan, this is not complicated. This is not complicated at all. And I think this is where, I mean, this is where I probably lose ground with people, is that they think things are far more complicated than what they are. But the religious story isn't a complicated one. It's easy to understand. You know, selfish people, what they do is they, you know, are greedy and they want bigger and bigger empires. And we know through history that those same people, the ones that are building empires, like to play the God show. And that then ties back to, it all comes back to the two wolf story and this idea of validating reality by the senses versus the faulty faculty that's our brain. It'll dawn on you one day, mate, if you don't agree with me. I promise you, one day in your life, oh well, as long as you don't get hit by a bus, you'll say, ah, shit, Rob was right. Rob was right.
Yeah, I already said that we're on the same page when it comes to the sensory topic. We're on the same page with that.
Yeah, well, you'll eventually have to conclude that I'm on the same page on the trolling as well.
Oh well, yeah, the trolling we're on the same page with as well. I mean, I've seen a lot of what you've seen, directly observed it, and it's very apparent.
Yeah, but with you, mate, I mean, I've seen two instances recently where you've been the troll.
Specifically, what hangout and what individual? Are you talking about with Patrick?
Yeah, yeah.
Well, Patrick and I have a thing going on the side here that's separate from any trolling, so to speak. Patrick has consistently insulted my previous career and made up and insinuated and made up claims that aren't true about me. And so that's why
Okay.
I brought up Patrick.
Yeah, but you see, I did what you did back about 12 months ago, and I promise you, that's not the way to deal with it.
Well, second, I'm a very blunt and honest person, and I'm
Yeah, but
very
that's me. Hey, Dan, I'll stop you there. That's me too. I mean, that's how I view myself and I view my work as an honest effort to understand religions. And I think that I worked a lot of shit out, how it all came to pass. And if I ever get round to that second book, I mean, I think I have high confidence I'll be able to demonstrate these behaviours consistently occur right through history. This relationship of empire to churches. Um, so I hold in me that I'm quite genuine. There's no bullshit in what I'm doing. I reacted like you did, right? I fought back with these clowns when they wouldn't give me a hearing and all the rest. It just doesn't work. You're better to piss them off because they're like gnats on a fly's bum. They're in the bigger scheme of things. They're, they're not anything at all. I mean, they capture the notion that they've got some sort of powerful presence, but they simply don't. And that's true of Patrick too. Patrick prides himself on his science, which I wouldn't hesitate to believe. But in terms of his voice in against reality or whatever, or his voice, it'll never ever be heard because he isolates himself. So his criticisms aren't powerful, is I guess what I'm saying. Same with Chaz. I took to heart his criticisms, but only because I couldn't get the bastard to listen to me. And that's where I got frustrated. And it was just frustration, that's all. But I tell you something, uh, although I niggle them and I might have fallen into the personal attack thing, I don't do it anywhere near as much as those guys do. I don't lower myself to that standard. So I understand where your frustration is coming from, mate, but I'm telling you, that reaction does you more harm than good. You got to be a bigger man, as they say in the classics.
Well, sometimes people don't want to. Sometimes people are too stupid to see. how flawed they are, and sometimes it's good to give them a kick in the ass.
Well, it's relieving your own tension, but it doesn't do anything. It doesn't prove anything. It doesn't change anything. See, that's where this forum's a pain in the ass. And I had a 3-hour session yesterday on this topic of sensory perception. Sorry, not perception. Sensory experience and its variation to the perception of the mind, and where the error occurs. So I had this, simple topic, right? But it became a 3-hour long bloody discussion, and it attacks their knowledge, their ego identity, their beliefs in reality, right? It does. It threatens their whole. And as soon as people recognise that, bingo, you've got the bloody behaviours of the cognitive dissonance behaviour, and the group will gang up on you. Whereas to answer the question, to do it properly, you've got to go through that step-by-step inquiry, right? The people aren't patient enough to do that, or they see the threat, right? So they still don't want to see it. They don't want to participate in the proper inquiry. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, they don't have the research, right? And that's frustrating, right? Isn't it?
Well, that's the biggest folly in all of this, Rob. They don't want to do their research because they want to just come on here and just hear their own voice. I mean, they don't actually want to have to sit down and read anything. That's the biggest folly of it all.
Well, I don't know that it's that deliberate. I think it's more of the case that they simply haven't done the research. So therefore, their ego is a bit exposed because they don't want to be seen as a dummy. They know, oh my goodness, don't talk about that. That's boring, right? But what that means is, don't talk about that because I know sweet FA about it. That's what it really means. And that's a barrier for these types of conversations on the internet. And that's where you break out and you end up having your own little session with like-minded people, but that achieves fuck all. When you're talking about beliefs as a problem, that's a conversation that everyone should have and understand. The world, you have no idea how important that discussion is across the globe and what impact that would have. People talk about the peace movement. This is the discussion that creates the potential for that peaceful outcome. Attacking beliefs, or identifying the faultiness of the mind and accepting the truth of that statement. It's very powerful stuff, very simple stuff, but try and get people to have a discussion on it. That's another kettle of fish. So we've been talking about why the troll Fatty Chazwold is wrong. Chazwold. And our summary is that he's wrong because he's a dumbass. Hey, but if you ever listen to this, Chazwold, that's a curable condition. All you do is you go and do some research, some proper research, and then you won't be called a dumbass and you won't be a troll. So this guy's got an inadequate knowledge of reality, and he's got some sort of inferiority complex, and for that the world has to suffer. So Chazwold, stop it. Grow up. Be a decent human being. Anyway, Dan, what do you want to talk about?
What did you have for lunch? I heard you eating earlier.
What's that? Sorry.
What did you have for lunch?
I'm having breakfast. It's breakfast time here. 8:07. What
What
time?
did you have this morning?
Just wheat bix.
What is that?
It's sort of like geez, I've never thought about it. To tell you the truth, it's like a wafer biscuit. A wafer biscuit. Oh, hello, hello, hello.
Hey, Rob, I think this Farhan guy is Muslim.
Oh, hello. Are you a Muslim, Fahan? Fahan, talk.
He's a friend of Lindsay Lou as well.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that was funny you say with Lindsay. Lindsay, I asked her if she was Muslim, and she said no.
But then she went on to say that she believes in God. So wasn't that wasn't that an interesting paradox?
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah. Well, people, God does not exist. Never did, never will. It's just a made-up story. And I can tell you specifically how it was made up. Yeah, so wheat bix, they're like a little biscuit of, I don't know, I suppose it's made of wheat. Crunchy sort of biscuit. They're about, what, 3 inches long maybe, about a half-inch high, and about an inch and a half or an inch or so wide. And you put 4 of them in a bowl, put milk and hot water on them, and that's breakfast. Do you have anything like that in the States?
No, it's not. It's not really a popular type of thing. Um,
What do Americans have for breakfast?
very simple, just very simple. Well, actually, we're big on omelets, I guess. Omelets are very big here.
Ah, okay. Yeah.
So they have like a ton of varieties of omelets that they'll make. That's probably the only complex thing that we have with our breakfast here. Otherwise, it's your simple, sausage and biscuits and gravy, and your simple, poached egg or scrambled egg or fried egg.
Mm.
Those
Yeah.
omelets, like there's a whole like omelet movement here.
Yeah. I've been eating these biscuits for quite some wheat biscuits for quite some time, and I don't think it has an adverse effect on my health and well-being. Now I don't know whether Farhan, are you going to talk to us?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm actually on my phone and it's acting kind of weird and it's not connecting to my car.
Oh, okay, mate. Okay. Well, so you're driving?
I am, yeah, but it's not like I have my phone literally down looking at it. Nothing.
Oh, don't put yourself at risk, mate.
Oh, I'm not
Uh,
looking at my phone. Like completely not. It's
yeah,
basically sitting in my lap.
Rob, it's just like talking to somebody while you're driving or having the radio on. He's not actually
Oh,
looking at you.
yeah, I understand there. Yeah, yeah, got it.
Hey Farhan, I know you from Stickcam. But Farhan, if it's easier for you, just leave your mic open.
Yeah, but is there a background sound though?
No, sounds great.
Okay, well I haven't. I'm at a stoplight right now, so we'll see.
Yeah.
No, no, it'll be fine. Google has the noise canceling thing. It blocks out background noise.
Okay, well you'll find out as soon as this light turns green. But yes, you remember me from Stickam?
Yeah, when I talked to you on Stickcam, you were studying Islam, and you said that you weren't really sure if you're Muslim or not. And I think now you've made a total transformation. Is that correct?
I said that?
You said you were learning Arabic and all kinds of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, I was definitely doing that, but I don't think I ever said I was doubting Islam.
Oh, Rob, I think we have somebody that wants to talk to you, Rob.
Yeah, okay. Well, I'll introduce myself, Farhan, and if you leave or are uncomfortable with my position, I understand, so no drama here. I don't have anything against any human on the planet. In fact, I aspire to influence peace in some way. So I hate no humans. I don't have hate in my mind, if you like. But I have some very strong views. So I hold the view that the Injil of Islam is a real document and that it currently exists. It currently exists. I hold that Jesus is a real person, and I think I can prove that point. But I don't hold with any views of gods. I think that they're a fabrication, and I think that there's plenty of evidence for that over history. And my major criticism against Islam, I read a bit of the Quran, was that it's one of the obvious things that struck me about the Quran is that it seems like it's written, well, it doesn't seem, it's very clearly written by a 7th century mindset. So when I saw that, and I saw evidence of that, I then concluded that it wasn't written by a god. This is the work of 7th century people, humans. So that's my view.
When you say I'm actually more curious about what you say when you say the Injil is still in existence today.
Yes, yeah. So what you can look at this from both the Christian perspective and the Muslim perspective, right? From the Christian perspective, there's a gospel. It's called the Gospel of Thomas, but if you actually examine the Gospel of Thomas, it's a collection of, interestingly, 114, which is a number that Islam can relate to because that's how many chapters are in the Quran. But it's got 114 sayings, and they're all from Jesus. So it's not correctly named when it says it's the Gospel of Thomas. It's actually the Gospel of Jesus, and Thomas is the person that wrote the collection down.
Okay. Are these sayings, I'm familiar, I mean, I'm not versed in it, but I've heard many references to the Gospel of Thomas. Interestingly, just randomly the other day at a coffee place. But I guess my question is more, are you saying that the Injil would be the sayings of Jesus, or are you saying that they would be, is that what you're saying?
You know, what I'm saying specifically is the Injil is the Gospel of Jesus. It's the teachings of Jesus. Hey?
If I was thinking about, when I think of the Gospels, any of them, and I don't know the Gospel of Thomas, I have not read it, but my understanding is, again, it's written by somebody else, as perhaps, maybe it really is from Jesus, I don't know. If it's written by somebody else, and it's, well, more specifically, if it's the sayings of Jesus, that would be the equivalent of, our hadith. That would not really be the equivalent of, the Quran or the Torah.
Yeah, exactly. But anyway, if I just finish on the Christian side of the argument, on the Christian side, the Christians say that text is rejected. They reject the Gospel of Thomas as being false. However, in the academics world, there is a community of academics that date the Gospel of Jesus, recorded by Thomas, back to 40 AD. There is a group that say, no, it's not 40 AD, it's 140 AD. I sit with the camp that say, no, the Gospel of Jesus is 40 AD. Now, there's a theory in the Christian debate called Q-source theory. Now, Q-source theory says that the Gospels of Mark, Matthew, and Luke were constructed using a common Jesus sayings list. I know from my research that it is a fact that the Gospel of Thomas, or Gospel of Jesus written by Thomas, 61 of the sayings of those 114 are actually used inside these synoptic Gospels. That's a fact, an undeniable fact too. Now, what interests me from...
Sorry? it's like literally word for word, like the same thing, right?
Well, no, it's not actually. There's changes that are made, and I can give you a couple of examples that show, you know, what the basis of those changes are. But I just wanted to talk for a minute about the Injil. So now, the
Sure.
Muslim community say that there was some Jesus sayings or a gospel of Jesus, but it was corrupted by, and I'm not sure that they actually name who, but it was corrupted in the Gospels of Mark. Which is, can you see the similarity? The stories are exactly the same. Q source
So
matches
I don't
across
think we consider
to the
any of the
Injil.
Gospels to be the.
Hey,
I don't think any of the Gospels are really parallel. The idea of the Gospels is that they're books, and this is my understanding. I'm not a scholar. I'm not even biblically literate. I would plead ignorant, but from what little I do know, the Gospels themselves are sayings about Jesus. So they're like people who wrote regarding Jesus. So maybe, for example, there was a man, I don't know, but let's say there was a man named Thomas who met and conversed and had conversation and discourse with Jesus. He narrated and wrote those sayings down in a book that was preserved and eventually became known as the Gospel of Jesus. That would be the equivalent of our hadith, which is like sayings of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, things that were written down and said about him and so on and so forth. That would be the hadith. The idea of the Quran is that it's not actually the sayings of the Prophet, it's the sayings of God. And same with the Torah, and I would, for sure, and same with the Injil, and there's other scriptures. But when I hear the Gospel of this according to Thomas, I think I can't be.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that last point.
When I hear the Gospel of, is my audio coming in clear?
Yeah, okay, now, yes.
Yeah, well, I said when I hear the Gospel of anybody, the Gospel of Jesus according to XYZ, and it consists of the sayings of Jesus, I think that can't be the Injil because the Injil would have been God speaking, not Jesus speaking.
Yes, and I've heard that position, but I promise you that, well, this is where we get into a longer discussion, but the Injil, I'm pretty sure that what the authors of the Quran were referring to is, in fact, this collection of Jesus' sayings, his teachings. Now, why do I say that? Well, and I'll say that with strong conviction. And the reason I say it with strong conviction is I actually took the time to read every one of the sayings, and they are 100% accurate interpretation of the human condition, right? And what it means to be an enlightened individual. So I personally know that this is the real Jesus teaching. When I go into the Gospels of Mark and look at how those same texts are used, I see how they've been, I'll use the word bastardized. They use things like the fear and loathing, which is not really part of the human condition. The fear and loathing notion is something to, it's like mind control basically, but I can clearly demonstrate that. I can show how we have, one, an excellent spiritual, accurate philosophy in the Gospel of Thomas, and then the same saying I can show how it's been used and abused in the synoptic Gospels. Now, Muslims hold that view. They hold the view that Jesus' teachings were corrupted, don't they?
Yeah, generally speaking, yeah, I would say so. I mean, if the idea is like Jesus is God or the Son of God in any literal sense, then yeah, I would say we would hold that as corrupted.
Yeah. So here's the thing, my friend. I hold the view that if people studied these teachings of Jesus, it would have a massive impact on our global community, and it would end the conflict between Muslims and Christians once and for all. And it would deliver on the promise of presenting Jesus for who he really was. Not some sort of miracle man walking on water, but just a truly great philosopher.
So if I could ask you your position, and that makes I would not even disagree with that in any way. Like, I don't know, not about these specific texts, but about the idea of knowing who Jesus was in any definitive way. I can't imagine anyone would that would certainly settle probably every conflict in the world. Sorry if there's a lot of feedback.
Oh, sorry, just say that comment again, please.
I said I can't imagine that knowing the truth, like knowing and implementing the teachings of Jesus, would not but lead to world peace.
Oh yes, yeah, I agree.
Yeah, otherwise, I mean, it's just I'm not like I'm not illiterate, but from what I've read of like the Beatitudes and these types of things, and just different sayings, like parts of John in specific, I've been reading through. It does seem like a very overtly peaceful, almost pacifist in some cases, tolerant, loving faith, and yeah, definitely. I've never read the Gospel of Thomas. I don't know what it consists of.
Yeah, well, it takes a bit of work to actually decipher his meanings, but if you're interested, I can share my work on that. Although I muck around a bit with some of my sayings, but I've done all of the interpretive work. And the thing is, you should be able to relate his sayings back to yourself as a human being today. I mean, otherwise, where's the authenticity? And I found that I was able to relate it all back 100%. It all made perfect sense.
So I have two questions.
Yeah.
Two questions. Number one, in the story, in the Gospel of Thomas, is there anything that says to the effect of that one day Jesus walked with his people and they saw the carcass of a goat or like an animal of some sort, like some type of animal that had died, and everyone said, "Oh, what a disgusting thing this is! It's a rotting corpse." And then Jesus looked at his teeth and said, "Well, what wonderfully white teeth." That's is there any story of that nature in the Gospel of Thomas?
Yes, there is. I'll just read it to you and I'll explain what it means.
Sure. Yeah, because that's a hadith as well.
Gotta find it.
My second question, while you're looking for it, is so are you I don't know how to use the term. I'm kind of making up terms, but are you like a spiritual atheist?
No, I don't like to use the term atheist. I'm not comfortable with that term, and I'll tell you why. Atheism, one of the things that turned me off atheists and their position is that they still hold beliefs. So they hold the belief that many of them hold the belief that Jesus didn't exist, and they stubbornly resist any information to the contrary. So that tells me, see, the Jesus that I know, he doesn't teach belief at all. Quite the opposite. He teaches knowledge and knowing and understanding. And that to me is the true way, if you like, through life. But an atheist, they will settle on a belief, and then when you try and challenge their belief, they'll just dig in and they won't listen. It's sort of like la 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 la. So no, I'm not an atheist. I'm a realist. I'm a realist that with great conviction holds the view that Jesus was a real person, and he has probably one of the best teachings going round that would benefit humanity greatly. That's me.
Okay. Well, when I think atheist, I think someone who doesn't believe in any type of deity or God or anything of that nature. I wasn't getting into because yeah, that is a little bit of an annoying feature, and some of them will deny that Jesus existed. That is kind of weird, especially like in this time. But okay,
yeah, well, the evidence is really overwhelming. The evidence isn't overwhelming, but
present.
It's much stronger for his existence than it is for his non-existence.
Well, it's technically impossible to have evidence for his non-existence.
Yeah. Here's their saying, I think. He saw a Samaritan carrying a lamb and going to Judea. He said to the disciples, that person around the lamb, odd way of saying it, they said to him so that he may kill and eat it. So the apostles with him said, that the person was carrying the lamb so he could kill and eat it. He said to them, so now Jesus then turns back to his apostles. He says to them, he will not eat it while it is alive, but only after he has killed it and it has become a carcass. They said, otherwise he can... Oh, hang on. I'll get that back here. My screen is chopping it off.
No problem. Take your time.
Yeah. So they said, otherwise, so we've got this concept, he will not eat. So Jesus is saying to his apostles, he will not eat it while it's alive, but only after he has killed it and has become a carcass. They said, otherwise he can't do it. This is the followers. Jesus' response to their response is, he said to them, so also with you, seek for yourself a place for rest, or you might become a carcass and be eaten. Now, what that's about, Jesus is very much about finding and knowing yourself, the enlightenment experience, right? So he's teaching the enlightenment. And he's saying to these guys, find yourselves, that is, know yourself. So an important part of life is to become to know ourselves, to learn about what I call the two wolves inside us all, these two primitive instincts. One's about the self, being selfish, and the other's about the herd, about belonging to the family, the human community. So we have both of those aspects in all of us, all humans, male, female, black, white, doesn't matter who you are, you can't escape these survival instincts. So he's saying, seek for yourselves a place for rest. So what happens when you become fully self-aware and lose your ego identity, just let that go, then you're fully aware of yourself, you've found yourself, you've become enlightened, and that's when you get rest in life, because the mind then just settles. The inquiry for meaning, or the search for meaning, is over, finished, forever. It's done, and you just live in the moment of life. You live and love, sort of thing, and that's life. And then what he's saying is, if you don't achieve that goal in your life, you'll end up, your life's a waste, you die, and then you become food for the worms, and that's it, So he's trying to encourage them to get on with this task of enlightenment.
That sounds almost like Sufism.
Yeah, but it's reality, mate. That's the real world. You would expect that spiritual traditions across the world would sound familiar. Why? Because they're talking the truth.
Yeah, a lot of them actually do say the whole self-realization thing. A lot of them do. In fact, I've yet to come across anyone that doesn't specifically say that.
Yeah, and another thing they say is this love thy neighbour. That's held in common. Well, do you know what that is? That's that herd instinct. If you think about it, think about this for a minute. In nature, you have certain groups of animals that pack together as like a herd. And what's the way of keeping a herd together? Well, the answer is you have to keep a close eye on your neighbour. If you fail to keep that connection with your nearest neighbour, you break away from the herd and your survival strategy fails. It's simple, but it's true.
Cool. So why would you preface this whole conversation by saying that you didn't hate anybody and stuff like that? It made it seem like you were preparing me for something, but nothing you said seems offensive or hurtful or anything in any way. Yeah,
no, that's okay. I didn't know the level of your spiritual maturity. If you're a person,
I'm pretty immature.
no, you're fine. I'm a good reader of people, so you're a good person. But what I was going to say, you just don't know at the outset. Some people, their spirituality is based on a strong conviction or commitment to the religion, right? Now, I can get into topics where I promise you I will challenge that strong conviction in a God, and that can lead to cognitive dissonance. So I just preface the conversation so that in case that happens, at least you know.
That is possible. Let me ask: is your argumentation is it like specifically against the idea of God, or is it that the idea of God is against the spirit?
No, it's specifically against beliefs. I hold the view that beliefs of all form are harmful for humans. And to give you the simplest example, to keep it out of the religious context, ego. You come across people with egos, you should know that they are a problem not only to themselves but to other humans.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah,
They say like, no, that makes absolute sense. We have a tradition that says a person who has even like a mustard seed, it's an expression meaning a very small amount, even just the slightest amount of ego, and the word uses arrogance, but it's the similar idea, is that that person will never enter heaven.
Well, that's true. That's absolutely 100% true spiritually. Now, I hold that heaven isn't a real thing, but it's absolutely 100% true to say that if you have an ego identity, you will never achieve enlightenment. You have to deal with these notional ideas in your head that are false. Once you clear them, then you're done and dusted. You'll enter. See, Jesus holds the view that paradise is a place on earth, and it is when you're fully enlightened.
Let me say one thing that have been thinking about, or just this conversation. And by the way, I'm kind of close to home. I'm like maybe 10 minutes away, which is that for example, you're saying that spirituality needs to be in this world. You need to have heaven in this world. Okay, makes sense. I think there's even like Islamic traditions that would kind of agree with that. Here's my question though. Let's suppose somebody has a lot of money, or has aptitude or desire, not aptitude, appetites, whether they're food or like sexuality, or they want to sleep a lot, or whatever that desire is, that is in the way of their spiritual realization. In the Islamic tradition, it's kind of like everything in its balance, everything in its place. So like you're allowed to indulge in any of these things, or maybe indulge is the wrong word, but partake in any of these things within a certain limit. I know, like in the Hindu tradition, their whole deal is that like every time. So like for example, like eating, for example, can be a spiritual act, within certain confines. And then you move on to a certain part of your life. When you get older, then you search for that inner peace and so on and so forth. I guess my thing is, like, let's suppose somebody had $1 billion, like, and never could run out of money. And why wouldn't this person just engage in pleasure all the time? Why would they care to go for any type of spiritual journey? I would just indulge in that money and just have fun the rest of my life.
Yeah, you might think that, but I guarantee to you, I promise you this, you can spend your life searching for it if you wish, but the reality will never, ever, ever, ever change. Things of a material nature are, the ego mind, right? So the ego is never satisfied, will never be satisfied, ever, ever, and that's a problem. The spiritual side is satisfied in the moment, in the now. So, well, it's true. That's the way it works. So,
no, I'm agreeing with you. I'm absolutely agreeing with you.
No, yeah. So what I'm saying to you is, you can have material wealth, but it's inconsequential, And if it leads you down the wrong path, because it can do. I mean, there was a very good study done by Berkeley University that showed that if you made people psychologically wealthy, their behaviours, changed. They became more egotistical. You can't hold desires for money. What you need to do is eliminate all of the ego nature, and just a couple of things that you should consider. be authentic, keyword authentic, because in true spirituality you can't be a liar. You just can't. Be authentically selfless. That's a very important thing. And I don't know, I guess it's the enlightenment stage, but you just don't labour thinking about things anymore or wondering how the world works or whatever, because there's just no point in that. You just live in the moment. That sounds, people worry about, well, what about preparing for the future? Well, yeah, you'll take care of that. You just do, you know. It doesn't, just because you're enlightened doesn't make you stupid.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have a tradition that says if the son of Adam was given a mountain's wealth or something like that, he would desire two of them. And it says nothing will satisfy the desires of Benu Adam, or Benu Adam, like the son of Adam, except for dirt, which means like until they die, they'll always desire things. And we say that there's nothing actually wrong with having things like material possessions. There's nothing wrong with that. But as long as it's in the hand and not in the heart, then it's okay. So, but if it's in your hand, then it's a good thing. But if it enters the heart and you can't live without that thing, then it's a bad thing. You know, people get stuff and they lose stuff, and they get pleasure and they lose pleasure, and that's fine. That's a normal, the turning of life. But it's what really, if it doesn't affect you like deeply, it doesn't break that connection. I mean, we would say with God, I guess you would say. I guess kind of just the inner peace. But yeah, I mean,
Well,
that makes sense. Go ahead.
Thank you, Dom. I was just going to say,
but go ahead. You say what you
I
want
was
to
just
say.
going to say the inner peace comes from the thanks, Dom. The inner peace comes from the end of the inquiry. This is the phenomenon he's talking about, to find rest. The reason that you rest is because you come to know. Here, I'll read this one. This is the enlightenment journey, right? Very specifically. I'll tell you, one of the things that impressed me about Jesus was how eloquently he said things, simply and eloquently. He said, those who seek should not stop seeking until they find. So he's saying clearly it's not about belief. There's something that you must come to know. When they find, they will be disturbed, right? And that's a true statement, because as we go through life, we develop an identity, and what I call the ego mind. And we do things that are wrong, even through puberty and those sort of stages in life, we make errors because we're immature. And those things have to be reconciled. You have to reconcile them, and you have to take responsibility for those things. And that can be a disturbing thought. It can be. So there's no avoiding the disturbance. That's why we have a phenomenon called cognitive dissonance. It's part of the human condition. Now, then he says, when they are disturbed, they will marvel. Well, it's a marvel when you learn that all humans on the face of the earth all have these same things going on in them. Right? This is part of the reality for every single human being, because this is what it means to be a human being. And then they will reign over all. What he means by that, he doesn't mean that you become king of the world. It just means that when you are dealing with people, you actually understand them better. Because you've come to know yourself, it means that you now know others. Right? And that's a very powerful position to be in. It allows a lot of more peace of mind. It allows you to handle people, because people can be funny creatures, I tell you.
Except for the last thing you said, I think I'm immediately thinking of everything that's like mirrored in Islam. The last thing you said, I just don't know. Like, I have to think about that.
Yeah, that's okay. I didn't finish, Farhan. It says then.
Sorry.
That's all right. I don't like misrepresenting Jesus. And after they have reigned, they will rest. So what that means is this is the state of enlightenment. This is when the mind's at rest. The inquiry's over. Now you just live your life and enjoy the benefits of the inquiry. That's it. Now that's perfectly true, perfectly true. And the document was written 40 AD, if you believe some academics, or 140 AD. And so it definitely came from the era. The Romans definitely used these sayings. So these are facts, unavoidable, undisputable facts. I think this is the man. This is Jesus.
Okay. Yeah,
Sorry,
I mean,
yeah.
No, I can't disagree with any of that. Yeah, I mean, that made absolute sense to me.
Yeah, because you're a human, mate, and you sound to me like a mature human. So here's something, I don't know you, right? Let me tell you a little bit about yourself, and tell me if I'm right or wrong.
Sure.
You may still fear a little about death, but have you achieved the point where you don't fear death? Yes or no?
I have to think about that. I guess.
Okay, that's all right. I understand. It tells me a bit about where you're at. Now, you're loved and you love.
Pardon?
You're loved by other humans and you love other humans.
Yeah, that's definitely true. But isn't that everybody then?
No, unfortunately not. But so the people you get respect from people, right? They like your company, yeah.
Yeah, I'd say so. I hope so.
Yeah, that's right. Well, it's nothing to be ashamed of. It's just the reality, and it's something that you enjoy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. See, now I don't know you. You could have been a mass murderer, but I tell you, that's who you are. I know you.
Say I'm a bit also.
Huh?
I would say I'm a bit of an introvert.
Yeah, well, you'll get there. That goes.
I mean, I don't mind it. I think I'm probably going to be introvert my entire life, and I don't think it's a bad thing.
Yeah, well, that's right. I mean, if you're happy, so be it.
Yeah.
But there is. Oh no, but I actually would suggest that you're probably the bloke that'll pull over when there's an accident and help out.
Yeah, that happens. That's happened.
Yeah. Yeah. Good man. Let's bring peace to this world.
We have something similar.
No, I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
I said I'm literally waiting outside of my door. So I should head inside in a second. But I was going to say, yeah. Well, first off, this doesn't upset me in any way. Even if you were to disagree with me, like the way you're speaking, I can't imagine getting upset. But what I was going to say was, I have a sheikh whose classes I go to, and he says that everybody kind of is born upon the primordial knowledge of themselves, and they're corrupted by their surroundings, and things come about. And then what happens is that as you start to initially progress in the spiritual path, you start to think you're actually getting worse. And there's a practice that people do, and it's probably most akin to meditation. And he says, people do that. You should do that consistently, and people will come to him and say, "I'm actually getting worse. What's going on?" And they're actually not getting worse. They're getting better. What's happening is that for the first time in their lives, they're seeing all of their negative qualities become apparent to them for the first time that they never were able to see before.
Yeah.
And it's disturbing them. And it kind of reminded me of what you said. You said that when you are confronted with this, it'll disturb you. I was like, yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah, well, it is right. It is right. The human condition doesn't change just because we think or believe other things. And when if you investigate things, you'll see that the story is the same across the human experience. And it doesn't matter whether you're an ancient... just 1 second, sorry.
Actually, do you mind if I head out?
Yeah, mate, you do that.
Hey, Farhan, hurry back soon, man.
Hello.
Hello.
Yes, hello.
Hi, Robert. It's Lauren calling from Dr. Gastroenterology. How are you?
Good, thank you.
That's good. First of all, just wanted to confirm your appointment for today, and if you're still coming in.
What time was that one?
10 o'clock.
Oh, no. That might be a bit difficult for me, I'm afraid.
Yeah, you won't be able to make it?
No.
Did you want to reschedule?
Yes, that'll be fine.
Yep.
You pick a time. Oops, sorry about that. Hello, Dan.
Hey Rob, I thought that went really well. I think we're gonna have to do a part 2 with him and do a more formal debate. What do you think of that?
Yeah, that could be interesting. It's up to him, but I mean, he's a, you know, he's a, you know, a rather mature person spiritually. The issue, you see, this is where I get into a bit of drama, right? If I find someone that's spiritually almost there, I'm less inclined to really take the, you know, the God argument to task with them. I'd rather pick on someone. Pick on someone sounds terrible, but I'd rather talk to someone that that is spiritually challenged, right? So they're much more of a hard-headed believer, and they base their belief, their whole life on very strongly on these beliefs, because you know, we get into cognitive dissonance and all the rest of it. I don't know. I mean, I'll have a chat to the guy, so I'm quite happy to take that risk. But yeah, it'd be interesting, I suppose, because I'm usually fighting against people with stubborn views, and that's a difficult battle. People just lock in on these beliefs, and then they charge out of the room, or they get upset, or whatever the story is. But yeah, it was a good chat because, you know, he's a lovely guy. I mean, and it's important for me to sort of make the statement that, and I sincerely mean it, I've got nothing against Muslims, I've got nothing against Christians. What I do have a problem with is belief, you know, and belief's role in this world. It should be abolished completely. So, I don't know. Look, Dan, it might evolve. Just let it evolve, I think. If the guy's interested in hearing more.
Well, I went ahead and added him to my friend list. I've actually known of him since about 2008. I met him on a different chat site.
Yeah. Well, he's a good human being. I promise you. He's a good person.
Well, he's somebody that you can definitely go the full distance with on your
Well, no, we've sort of gone through all the preliminaries on spirituality, and you know, there's no real disagreement. The discussion probably should move to you know, the validity of the Quran, because that's a debate I want to have, and I've got material to substantiate why I think the Quran is a 7th century human document. It's got nothing to do with a god. So that'd be an interesting discussion, and it may be challenging for him. You know, I think I've got a good argument that shows that the Quran is just a made-up story.
Exactly.
Well, they all are.
Well, you've had a pretty good turnout thus far for an early morning, mid-afternoon hangout where I'm at. I mean, this is good that Benny came in and Farhan. I mean, this is a good hangout, Rob. You want to know the biggest thing that's made it good? No trolls. Isn't that great?
Oh well. Who's this Benny? Who's this Benny?
He's been on your hangouts before, Rob, but he usually doesn't have access to a mic because he's normally at work.
Oh, okay.
But he's also in Australia.
Oh, right, an Aussie. Aussie. Oi, oi, oi.
Yeah,
Never did really like that bloody call cry.
He's a much different Aussie from Bullfrog, I'll tell you that much.
Yes, the old bullfrog. What the hell are we going to do with him, eh?
It's obvious to me, Rob, that he has a drinking problem, and that's creating the majority of his behaviors.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think so. I think that sort of spent. I've been thinking about that. This phenomenon. You can tend to label the person with the behaviour, whereas the behaviour might be completely independent of the person. So what that means is that this study at Berkeley University. Basically what it showed is that if you put people into a set of circumstances and made them feel rich or feel poor, then the behaviours followed. And this is almost instantaneous, like this is done within the times of the experience. And so if you get that, so therefore, it's like the schoolyard scenario, right? You got the kids that are circling the fight in the schoolyards. Oh, yeah, okay, I'll have a look at that in a minute, Benny. I'm aware, I'm conscious of that, I just can't remember exactly what it was. But it's a good thing to remind me of that because I might be able to use it or destroy it, one way or the other. But anyway, so those kids, it's the set of circumstances that bring out the behaviours. So now when I think of Bullfrog and I think of Vladimir, I think it was the circumstances that bring out the behaviours. That's what triggers the start, and then it sort of escalates and grows from there. So yeah, I'm just, because they get really nasty personally. I know that that's part of the phenomena. That's part of the cognitive dissonance stuff. You get nasty to the other person. And it's a bad part of humans, but it is nonetheless a part of humans. So what am I trying to say here? See, I'm always trying to work out how to bloody get through to Bulldog and make him a decent human being. Oh yeah, this is the Stanford experiment, right? Where they basically did they get normal people in? Two of the prisoners. Two of the prisoners quit the experiment early, and the entire experiment was abruptly stopped after only 6 days, to an extent because of the objections of Christina. You'll see, this is the thing too. That objection stuff by this lady, that's a fucking problem. Because when you start working on the problem, you want to see it through. When you get soft in the heart and think that the person that's got an issue is being abused, you're not helping the problem. You're not solving the problem. Certain portions of the experiment were filmed, and experiments of footage are publicly available to students. Yeah, I'm probably going to say that I would find some issues with the whole methodology of the experiment, personally. It's not a good thing to create and this is something that academics do, they create unreal circumstances. When you're going to do this sort of shit, you got to do it for real. Yeah, I'll have a look at that. I'll read it. See if it... Oh, maybe I will. Excuse me for a moment. Down, have a chat with people. You're a chatty lot.
Well,
Hang on.
I think a cat has Scaff's tongue. That's all I'm saying.
You what?
Hey, Scaff! Shut the fuck up! You're being too loud, Scaff. Shut up.
Hang on, there's something else here in the chat, side chat. The Milgram experiment on obedience to authority figures was a series of social psychology experiments conducted by Yale University psychology at Stanley Milgram. Yeah. You see, the thing is, you probably sound, Benna, it'll probably sound conceited to you, but I'm done with the inquiry. I'm sort of good. I mean, I can look at most material now and tell whether it's good, bad, or otherwise. And all I really care about is, arguing the proposition that beliefs are harmful to humans. That's pretty much it. Ego minds, religions, whatever. Let the rest sort itself out. Now, down, I've got a session today with a religious folk, and I've got to work out how the hell I'm going to find this person. Or is he going to send me an invite? What's that? Okay, I got a person down that wants to come into the debate. And I need to get him a link. Okay, I'll put it here. Not a person down that wants to come into the debate. And I need to get him a link. Hang on. Shut that up in a minute.
Watching the YouTube link.
Yeah, I'm gonna put it up there. Hang on. I'll put it here. Where is it? Hang on. Yeah, I'm gonna put it up there. Ah, jeez. Where is it? There's a delay. Okay, done. Hang on, I'll just close that other window down. Righto, so, Rob, can you define knowledge? Yes, I can. So, knowledge is defined thus. You may not accept it, but I promise you, fight to argue with me. This will always be knowledge, always. Knowledge is sensory perception. So not perception, but senses engaged in reality. And that's it. There is no other form of knowledge. You can't rely on the mind because the mind is fallible, but the senses are infallible. They don't make errors. Now you might sort of say, well, hang on a minute, what about colour blindness? Well, colour blindness doesn't break the rule because it's a knowable variation. So when the variation is reported, we can go to the doctors and we can get an explanation. So we're still in the realm of knowing, knowledge, gnosis, right? You can't say that of the brain because the brain, no, your senses are never wrong. They never report wrong. Now you might then say, well, hang on a minute, Rob, what about bloody the spectrum, right? We can't see the full spectrum. So how are we able to, in a knowing way, report the full spectrum? We are limited. We are limited by our ranges that we have a capacity, but we can build tools to, we can build tools to define those extra ranges. But still, we're still using our senses for validation. And senses no, there's no error that occurs in the senses, none. Zip, nada, ever. There's no device in the senses that's available for error. The errors always occur in the brain, always. And that's a really, if humans could understand that that's actually a true statement, then we wouldn't have any beliefs at all. We wouldn't accept beliefs in our societies. We'd only accept an idea, a notional idea, when it was proven. And that would be a massive, massive step forward for humanity. Yeah, correct. That's right. But they're never wrong. They're never wrong. The error occurs in the brain. When you construct the reality from the sensory input, when you construct that reality, there can be errors in that construction in the brain. But the senses are never wrong. And they are the only tool that we have to actually engage reality. An illusion is in the brain. There's no illusions in the senses. So bring me God and let me have a sensory experience with it. You can't. Why? Because it doesn't exist. Yeah, well, they're raw data, but it's not faulty. It's not faulty. There's no fault in it. That's the point. Yeah. In the brain, there is potential for error. And I'll give you another example of an error in the brain. That's the ego mind. Where like our friend Chazwold, who thinks he's such a genius. Yeah, okay, mate. Chazwold, who thinks he's such a genius, that's faulty thinking on his part. It's not bared out in reality. So you get contradictions and drama queens and overweightness and all sorts of problems. I. Hey viewers, there's a link on the video if you want to jump into the room and you want to have an argument. Dan, I'm a little worried about my upcoming Christian debate because I just don't know how this person's going to contact me.
I talked to him last night, Rob, and it'll be in about 4 hours in which I'll do this debate with you, and I have him on my list, so I'll send him a message.
Good. Are you going to be around in 4 hours' time?
Yeah. I may not be here for the full 4 hours between now and then, but in 4 hours I'll be here. I'll pop in.
All right. Yeah. Well, if you could keep an eye on that and just let me know.
Absolutely, Rob, because I want to facilitate this debate as well. I want you to depone this guy.
Oh no, I'll win. That's undeniable. There can't be any other result. It's just how effective I am in getting him to listen.
That seems to be the biggest problem with everybody on here, Rob. Nobody wants to listen.
Yeah, but that's okay. That's the challenge, so I'll just keep working on it. With him, there's a double problem because he's got a bit of an ego about his abilities. I'm not sure whether he's the guy that said he's been at this for 20 years and never lost, and so I know the little tricks he's going to get up to. So, for example, right, what he'll do, he will try and avoid certain lines of inquiry. I promise you. I'm going to be equally determined that we actually pursue those lines of inquiry. So that might make the debate go a little haywire. And he'll want to use his own proven apologetics. And I'm not interested in that, so that's going to be a problem as well. I'll try and see if I can destroy one of his apologetic positions and see if that gets us anywhere. But I mean, when they talk linguistics, I can't play that game. I can't play the linguistics game. So I know nothing about it, and I don't care for it.
Yeah, the apologetics angle is always fail, in my opinion.
Yeah, but it usually leads you into a he said, she said scenario. So I'm not really interested in those lines of inquiry. Yeah, like the position of God exists, God doesn't exist. But I have a bit of a story to tell on that one, but they generally don't accept it either way. So it's sort of fruitless. I like the Book of Daniel as an argument point because that's got some good, credible research behind it. I like the Book of Isaiah because that's got some logical conclusions that are obviously flawed. Anyways, we will see what happens. Oh dear. Wonder what Chazwold's doing now.
That's a good point.
It'd be almost nice to have him in to fill a bit of time.
Well, go to your settings and make the proper changes, and I'm sure he'll be popping in right away.
Yeah, I'm sure he will do. But no, not today. I'm a bit busy focusing on this this debate for today. One step at a time. He can wait. Doing good to sort of stew a little bit longer.
Either way, I think the debate tonight is going to be interesting. If you want to stay live, that's fine. If you want to go off air, that's fine too. I think the hangout kind of served its purpose, I guess. If you wanted to go off air.
Yeah. All right. Okay, viewers. See you later, alligators, inner wilds, crocodiles.